a system where the rule of law does not abide, that you have instead the rule of men, or in the case in which the state intends to enforce the law, you rule by law, then all of these things break out. And the outcome of that is the impunity we see in our politicians. They've refused to play by the political rules because nobody can punish them.
I'll pick up on two things when we come back to you. While talking about culture and system. Two key words there, but we'll talk about that in just a moment. We'll go over now to Emmanuel Ere, our correspondent, who is standing by to tell us what's happening. Emmanuel.
The already troubled political atmosphere in Rivers State may have been worsened by reports of incessant kidnappings. Everyone appears to be worried about the situation, not just politicians. Even doctors in the state are at their wits' end as to why they should be targeted at this time. The feeling you get is that the political period may have created some form of blanket under which some persons carry out crimes in the name of politics. Journalists say they are also vulnerable. Freddie Idigbara, an assistant chief press secretary to the executive governor of Rivers State, who was kidnapped during an APC door-to-door campaign in Kana local government area, has been released after several days of a horrifying experience in the hands of his abductors. Details of his ordeal have not been made public, but he's taken solace in family and close relatives. The Rivers State Police Command is equally worried about the development. The CP, Dan Bature, says his men have declared war on all kidnappers. For now, everyone is hopeful that the security agencies will rise to the occasion and intensify security across the state.
Well, thank you, Emmanuel. Another scenario there, so handful almost everywhere you turn. Yes. But then, speaking about culture and system, do you think we have this democratic culture? I remember one of our former speakers, not long in this dispensation, did say, our democracy is homegrown, whatever that means.
Well, you know, my stock response to that is this illusion that Nigerians have that they're exceptional, that somehow that the rules of physics don't apply to them. That so therefore our own democracy has to be subject to our own definition of what democratic values are. That's not true. And the huge gaps we're seeing in the Nigerian body politics in the process is that we've refused to abide by some collective, legal, rational basis for organizing society. And we're all culpable in varying degrees, right? I do not think it's a cultural thing in terms of our own acculturation. I mean, in various cultures, there's a sense of fair play, there's a sense of justice, there's a sense of equity, there's a sense of caring for the minorities. We are like that as a people, right? But it hasn't transcended into the systems that we're trying to create, right, that will guarantee that we practice democratic values. The underlying thing are the values. It's not the physical manifestations of office. Right, it's the values that we're missing.
Okay, so what do you think out there about what we're discussing here today, the spate of violence and possible solutions? Go ahead and send us your comments. We'll be glad to receive them from you. We'll be back after the break. Join us again. Welcome back to Nigeria 2015. We're coming to you live from Lagos. It's time now for a look at the headlines with Kaide Alayode.
Well, thank you very much, Chamberlain. More twists continue to emerge in the impeachment controversy surrounding Governor Elechi of Ebonyi State as hundreds of protesters marched through the streets of the capital, Abakaliki, in support of the governor. Women and youths are seen carrying placards with inscriptions like "No shortcuts to Government House" and "Impeachment of the governor will not stand." The protesters are said to be from the 13 local government areas of the state. The anti-impeachment protesters have converged on the Government House, asking that those behind the impeachment process to desist from such action. Last week, 15 lawmakers in the Ebonyi State House of Assembly moved to remove the incumbent governor, Mr. Martin Elechi, while 9 other members of the House have alleged that their lives are now being threatened for not supporting the motion. And queues for the purchase of fuel have continued to emerge at various fuel stations across the country. When our crew visited some petrol stations across the country, the queues continued to mount, and some operators who spoke off camera could not even explain the cause of the scarcity. An attendant at the filling station in Bariga, Lagos, told our reporter that the station had not sold petrol in the last 3 days as tanks were dry and queues mounting because they could not load products from the depot after exhausting what they had in their reserve. And the controversy over the rightful candidate of the People's Democratic Party in Enugu State may have been brought to an end as a federal high court in Abuja has declared Ifeanyi Ugwuanyi the duly nominated candidate to represent the party at the polls. Two parallel governorship primaries of the PDP in the state had produced Mr. Ugwuanyi and Senator Ayogu Eze as candidates, prompting Senator Eze to challenge the PDP's action for fielding Mr. Ugwuanyi. And on the foreign scene, Iraqi troops and some of the country's militiamen are involved in a joint operation against Islamic State militants who had overtaken former President Saddam Hussein's hometown of Tikrit. The government says its forces are advancing into the city, though this has not yet been confirmed. But local media says the ISIS militants have been dislodged from some areas of Salahuddin province. Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi had met military leaders in Salahuddin province ahead of the advance, but he has offered pardon to all Sunni tribal fighters who have been misled or committed a mistake or the other to lay down arms and abandoned the IS. And those are the headlines this hour. Nigeria 2015 continues right now. Back to you.
Thank you, Kaide, and we'll pick it up from there. And we've since been joined by Professor Chidi Odinkalu of the National Human Rights Commission. They put together this report that we're taking a look at today. It's the incidents of election violence during campaigns and elections. Let me go over to him. He joins us via Skype. Good evening, and thank you for joining us today. Looking through this report, 22 states affected, 58 deaths, thousands injured. I mean, there are many who say that, look, by now, it's got a potential to have spread to other states. And then I look at some of the context that you talk about in this report, as far back as 1964. If as far back as that time, we're still talking about election violence during campaigns and elections at this time, how far or close are we to sorting this out?
Well, the only way to sort it out is to deal with, first of all, we've got to out it. We've got to acknowledge it exists. We've got to acknowledge it's a danger to our electoral process, and we've got to figure out a way to make accountability for it possible. We've got to figure out a way to make people pay a price, political as well, for it. Otherwise, we're not going to sort it out.
Well, I'm looking through one of them here because you made reference to the Sheikh Limu report in 2011, and they pointed out that hate and inflammatory speech is a major predisposing factor in violence. And then you also talk about doing something about hate speech. From this analysis that you've given here, I see there's a section that you highlighted, incidents to hatred, contempt, discrimination, and then freedom of speech. Let's take, for instance, on the social media. How are you going to go ahead and addressing such speeches on the social media?
Well, we're actually beginning to do that. We can't censor the social media as such, but we can contest that space. We cannot surrender the social media for the purposes of transmitting hate. And so we inject ourselves into the social media and contest the kinds of messages that people send out. I've decided to be personally active, but we've also got a handle that is institutional. So for those who are interested in this, first of all, my own handle through which I engage is @Chairman NHRC, @Chairman NHRC. Now, for the issue of hate speech, we've come up with a hashtag, no hate speech NG, no hate speech NG. Now, the idea is that we give people the spectacles and skills with which to recognize when hate speech happens. And if you notice any hate speech on social media in relation to Nigeria, what we've asked people to do is to tag it. Okay? When you tag it, no hate speech NG, we've got people who are working on tracking everything that is tagged with no hate speech NG. If you don't tag it no hate speech NG, you can tag it at Chairman NHRC. If you don't